All right, Masha. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the change in leadership we've seen with the pandemic shifting things and remote leadership. So, as someone that works with many companies and many different types of leaders, what have you noticed about this new paradigm?
In fact, currently leading a big team far away from where I am. I live in Spain, and the team that I'm leading is in Uzbekistan, which
Oh,
is quite
wow.
far.
Wow.
And there is a time difference that comes into play, plus difference, plus of course the distance. I get to go there every quarter, so not that often. But what I want to say about leadership is that the concept of leadership doesn't change whether you do it face to face or far away or through the screen. Leadership is about having a very clear vision and a very clear understanding and values as to how to get there and uniting the team that you're leading in that vision and values. And if everybody is clear, everybody is on the same page about where you're going, why you're going there, and how you're going to get there, then leadership, distance leadership, is not that different than being there.
Sure.
In some, yeah, because if we're talking about leadership and management, again, it's two different things.
Of course.
Managing a team is definitely a lot more difficult from far away, but leading a team, not that different from what I find.
Sure. So, in the differences in the communication, what are some ways that you find that a remote leader can effectively communicate their vision or get their leadership out to a team when they're not working with them in an office every day?
You want to get together relatively often because your teammates, the people that follow you, they need to feel that you're there for them, that you're thinking and caring about what they're doing and how they're doing. So you want to check on them quite often. Use coaching techniques. So ask questions, ask how they're doing, ask if they have any problem or issues. So they need to feel that you are there, just even if you're not, right, that you're thinking about them.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So when you're doing that, so what are some, have you seen, noticed any like structures as far as meetings go or those virtual check-ins or using project management software or structure that leaders can leverage specifically or tools that would help make this a little bit easier?
Yes, no, I use mainly Zoom. I'm just comfortable
Sure.
with that platform. I know a lot
Sure.
of teams use Teams. I think it's also important to know that I do have regular team meetings with everybody present, but I also have meetings one on one with team members. So there are 12 people on my team. Of course, there are instances where people need to lead much bigger teams. Then you will go in hierarchy, but you want to, besides having people all together, you want to also speak to people one on one, and not just with people that are directly under you, but maybe also go a little bit deeper, and if possible, speak to people because you're a leader for all of them and see how they're doing, and they would really appreciate it. From a technical point of view, like I said, I like Zoom. I always use video. It's different to the phones. I get on the phone if it's like a quick question, but I like to actually see the people.
Sure. And so, obviously, in that process, what would be the questions that you ask when you're checking in with someone? Especially, like you mentioned, if you're checking in with someone who may not be someone you're working with every day or a direct support, but what would you typically ask to that person to get what information you need to support them or to support the team as a whole?
So at every meeting, we have a very clear agenda, which they know in advance that it's going to be an agenda. And at the end of each meeting, there are action steps that each member, or maybe not each member at each time, but everybody knows what needs to be done before the next meeting. So we start the meeting with, okay, what has been done, what hasn't been done, why it hasn't been done, what happened, when it will be done. There's always deadlines. After the meeting, you want to write down the summary of each meeting so there is clarity about what is happening, what is expected next, and if there are any questions, like I have a chat for my team that we can always go back and forth and see if there are any problems.
That's something I agree with, and I like that a lot because one of the cool things and tools that you can use now, if you haven't seen these, there are many tools that you can use for Zoom meetings like Fathom.video or Otter.ai, where both of them will transcribe the meeting, and you can actually get summaries that are pulled up from that are pretty workable and speed up that process to say, okay, if you've called out action items or you've addressed certain topics or someone's coming back to the meeting later and they might not need to go through the whole meeting, you can literally click on certain points of the meeting where conversations are happening in the transcript and it'll just start playing from there. So for teammates who need to review quickly, it's such a cool way to streamline that process.
Ken, I love this. It's like you just said something that is very important. I think every single leader should be constantly learning and improving themselves, and looking at these new tools and looking at ways to lead better, keeping up with the times. So I'm going to speak to you after this
Oh,
to see
nice.
how
Of
I
course. I love that
did.
about this. So, what do you
Yeah.
think? So a big thing that comes up in terms of, I know that the number one reason that people generally say that they quit their jobs or they quit their teams is because of bad leadership or bad management. So, why do you think that is? And as a leader, how do you stay aware of that? What is going on in your team, and if they're unhappy with with a certain style, or if it's, or maybe something that's worked for years and years isn't something that's working anymore with your current team. So, as a leader, like, how do you stay aware of that, and what are some things that you should be watching for to keep that satisfaction as high as you can? Because we all know that turnover has a huge cost.
Yes, excellent question. Most people lead in a way that they want to be led if they had a leader. So we assume that our way of motivating somebody just because it works for us is going to work for someone else. But they might have a completely different style, a completely different way of being motivated or encouraged or supported. So it's very important, first of all, to understand that we all operate from our own world, so to speak, and learning about each member of your team. Again, if it's a manageable team,
Right.
up to 20 people, learning about each member. So having one-on-one, like a coaching session maybe, and asking some questions to see what is their style, what do they respond to. Some people respond to competition. They say, you should beat this person. If they can do it, you can do it, kind of like this. Some people can be
Sure.
discouraged by that. So that's definitely number one, recognizing that not everybody respond to what you think is best. And you need to understand how to lead in a variety of ways, motivate people in a variety of ways. Another thing is, if you're passionate about your project and your vision, if you're there full heartedly and you really want things to happen and you really want every single person to succeed in the process, to learn and to grow and to develop, not just for the purpose of a particular company mission or this business, but also for themselves individually. If you make it clear to them what's in it for them, I think it's very important. Then they will be a lot more motivated and involved. And if you care about them, they will care about you. If you care about the end result and you make it personal to them, they will also care about that. And you wouldn't have to try to motivate them that much. They would want to do it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you do as a leader? And I think we all experience this. It's funny, I normally don't do this on a recording, but we're recording this on a Friday. And so, all of us as leaders are like, sometimes you have projects you don't want to do, or aspects of something that are the mundane or the difficult or the annoying that you have to do. So, obviously, you mentioned that your leadership is reflecting on your team, and how you do these projects or how you take them on, even when you're not super motivated, is something that's good for you. So, how do you fire yourself up when you're doing things that you may not like to do or you may not want to do, and then pass that on to the team? Okay, we know that this isn't something that everyone loves to do, but how do we make it something that we're positive about and that we get through and that everyone stays encouraged and motivated throughout?
Interesting, because I can't remember the last time I experienced
That means you structured your life really well, which I give you credit for that.
Yes, yes. I think I would say lucky, but also I've worked very hard to get myself to the point that I don't really do what I don't like doing. So I love my job. I love my work. And it's the kind of thing that even if you don't get paid, you would do to a certain extent. For example,
Yeah,
coaching, I would do, and I do a lot, in
right,
fact, for free, just because I love what it gives me. Like it gets
right,
me, like gives me more energy. If you find yourself being drained on a daily basis, we're not talking about a one-off. Okay, everybody has a
sure.
hard day, everybody gets annoyed with something or someone, but if you find yourself on a consistent basis being drained, then something is wrong. Maybe you overgrown the project, something needs to be changed, because you don't want to wake up in the morning and think, oh no, not again, not another day, not this again, not this people again. That's not really good. You want to be excited to wake up, and you want to be excited to do what you're doing and excited about the outcome that you're working for.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with that, how do you, as you see this happening in your team? So, maybe you as the leader are happy doing what you're doing, and you, as you said, you've worked hard to get into that position. When you see someone on your team that's starting to struggle a little bit, or maybe have that attitude, What are some ways that you can take that on? Because again, that's something we all know is when you have a coworker, or a teammate, or someone, or a contractor, or anybody that you're working with that is becoming a negative influence on the rest of the team, how do you start to curb that and work on that and try to turn that around?
People don't suddenly change. If somebody is motivated and excited about doing something and they're doing a good job and suddenly they're not, it's also important to recognize that there's other life besides work. And sometimes things happen. And so I would, and I do, get on a call and just see if everything's okay with the family, with their health. Are they burnt out? What is actually happening? What is the underlying reason for them? Maybe there is a problem within a team. Maybe there is a communication issue. So I want to find out first why it's happening, what is happening, coach them through that, and then find ways to for them to look forward to something. Like, for example, I could
Right.
say, if we can reach this target, if we can do this and we do it together, then this let's all go to Spain. Let's just have
Right.
this image, this like we're all partying in Spain because we got this, we made this happen, and we
Right.
supported each other. So something like that, just to get them to look forward to something. It needs to be like a final, but that applies to everybody actually.
Sure. So, one of the things that I was researching in preparation to talk to you today and interview with you is that burnout is on the rise. You mentioned burnout and what you were talking about, and more people are reporting that they're feeling burned out and overworked and have problems with, again, and some of these projects come down to leadership as how a project is led or managed or that kind of thing. So, what do you think is the reason that so many people are feeling burned out now? And again, at the leadership level, what are the things that you can look at to stop, to put systems in place, or to put, or to work with people, as you just mentioned, to improve
Yes.
their situation and get them out of those patterns?
Yes, yes, for sure. That's an excellent topic, and that's one of the main objectives of my coaching. I work for the last 20 years with mainly entrepreneurs, CEOs, C-level executives. And then I remind them that their work or the business that they're doing is not their life, that there is life as well. There's life
Right.
happening besides that. Right now, I'm working with top executives in this really big bank. It's 10,000 people. And there's a lot to be done, a lot. And the same with, let's say, with when an entrepreneur is launching a business, you can work 24/7 and there's
Right.
always going to be something to do. And that's what I tell them. There's always going to be work. There's always, you cannot just, oh, let me just finish and then it's done. It's never done. There's always something to do. So you have to prioritize yourself. I say to them, you need to make appointments with your most important client, which is you. And you need to see that as if you're meeting your most important client. Honor and respect the time that you allocate to yourself, because if you burn out, nothing's going to happen. If you're not there for your children while they're growing up, you're going to lose that relationship and nothing is worth it. If you're not
Right.
giving your time to a spouse, if you're not enjoying your life in the process, then what is the point of all that? It's not about the end results, it's also about the journey. And we get so caught up about trying to get somewhere really quickly. And I just don't understand, because tomorrow is not promised to anyone. Yes, we
Of
need to
course.
have clear vision as to where we're going, a clear understanding as to why we're going there. But at the same time, every day is now, you're living now, you're not living in the future. So you want to balance it. That's very important.
Sure. So it's to the topic of balance, something that was asked a lot and brought up a lot by my community is asking, like, how do you balance being a team leader and working with people when you have a lot of obligations that are pulling you away from the office? So maybe you're traveling a lot. Maybe you have a big project going on where you are very personally involved or personally hands-on from it. So how do you manage that and manage yourself when you have those kinds of difficulties? Especially like you mentioned, you're traveling all over the world to work with people right now, and that's got to be something that's challenging, balancing the travel with working on those projects. So, what would you recommend for people in situations similar to you?
Yes, I always say I used to teach leadership in the university, and I always started with saying you cannot be a leader for others if you cannot be a leader for yourself. So we always start with how to be a leader for yourself, how to organize your time well, how to prioritize, how to manage the time, how to also have clear vision and purpose and understand your values. All the elements of a good leadership first needs to apply to you personally. So if you haven't done that for yourself, I think it's very important that you do that. In terms of managing travel and the people, they do understand that we're all human beings. So we treat each other as human beings. And if you have the counter, yeah, if you explain honestly and clearly, kindly that I'm traveling or I'm tired or I'm underslept, I apologize or something, you don't try to be God, you're a human being. But if you want people to be there for you, you need to be there for them. So you
Yeah.
need to give what you expect others to give you.
Makes sense. So, what do you think is the difference between leadership as you're moving between levels? So, obviously, there's some people who start as a middle manager or somewhere in the middle of an organization, but then they start moving up and more responsibility, more projects, more things. And let's say that there's someone that moves to the CEO level or they're now at the top or leading a project on their own. How do you navigate those levels of leadership transition into becoming a successful leader as you go between leadership ranks?
What I've noticed is that there are people that are amazing managers, but they're not very good leaders. And I think it's because they don't recognize the difference. There's quite a difference between managing and leading. And so when you're used to managing, basically making sure that everybody does what needs to be done, supervising what they're doing, and so on. When you become the CEO, when you become a leader, you tend to do that. And that's actually not your job anymore. That's a
Right.
job of a manager. Your job is to have that clear vision and to communicate that vision in a way that not only people understand what it's about, but they also get very motivated and excited about it. You want to excite people. You want to just be, again, passionate about that vision and look for ways to get there in the most creative and efficient way. So it's more about that. Leading is about the vision, communicating that vision, having congruency about it. And it's keeping the politics in place, but it's not about micromanaging as to who does what. Yes, you want to make sure that things are done, but you don't want to go into little details of it. And a lot of people actually tell me, I've had clients that would have the ambition to be a leader, to lead a team, to go up in the ranks. And when they get there, they're like, I'm not happy.
Right.
That's not what I expected. That's not what I wanted. I was much happier being in that comfort zone of what I've been doing for years. And I was actually doing a much better job being there. Now it's like a whole different ball game. And a lot of them are not happy and they want to go back. So it's not necessarily just because your position is higher and you have a title, it doesn't mean you're happier.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about adversity on a personal sense and for when teams are facing that. What are some things that leaders need to know or how to communicate or how to deal with when they're facing adversity in their projects? So maybe they're not meeting a revenue goal. Maybe there's something wrong in a project or something gets messed up and you have to go back. How does a leader navigate that as effectively as they can?
So you mean if somebody comes to the leader and says, I'm having problems
More so from the project perspective. So rather than the personal problems, what happens when the company is not meeting their goals? Maybe your sales team is not meeting their revenue goals, or maybe your marketing team is not generating the leads that they need to, or maybe you're off on that goal and you're facing a lot of adversity within the team on the project, not on a personal sense. What are some things that as a leader you can do in those moments again to help motivate or steer the ship in the right direction, turn things around?
clear communication is always the key.
Yeah.
There's nothing new here. Actually, speaking to the managers of the project, speaking to the people involved, and finding out what are the actual obstacles, what's happening. Is it technical issues? Is the morale down? Is there not enough team support, teamwork? Sometimes we need to bring experts from the outside if things are not moving the way we want to move, because there's only so much that we know and understand. And everything, especially nowadays, is moving so quickly. Technology is constantly changing. The economical market is changing. Everything is changing very rapidly, and it's almost impossible to keep up with all aspects of business. If things go stale and things don't seem to be moving, I would probably bring an outside expert or advisor to analyze the situation to see what's going on, because it's much clearer to see it often from the outside.
That makes sense. So obviously you've been a coach and a mentor and someone that's worked with leaders for a long time. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find on your side when you're coming in to work with a leader and starting to work with them and persuade them and help them develop their style? What are some things that you face on your side when you start working with leaders?
I don't find that I need to persuade that hard because I usually work with people that want to do better and they
Right,
want to be successful. I think it's important for leaders that are very busy already. And if they're going to dedicate time to do something, they need to be very clear as to why am I investing my time right now? I'm not even talking about money because you're
right,
investing money. But most importantly, what I find with these people is that the time has huge value. So if they're going to invest an hour to speak to someone or to do something that is asked of them, they need to understand very clearly what is the outcome of this investment of my time. So from the very beginning, I tell them exactly, if you're going to do this and that, you're going to double your productivity and double your time off. For
right,
example, double your income, double your time off, because you're going to be much more clear. You're going to have the exact plan. You're going to learn how to practice creative procrastination if we're talking to people who procrastinate. And you're going to learn all these techniques and tools that will really help you to stay focused and to balance your life, which means you'll have a lot more energy and which means, you will be happier in your day-to-day life
right.
doing what you're doing.
You are the creator of a system that is called the 1 Minute Coach. You've written books on it and developed programs about it. So, what is the 1 Minute Coach and why is it something that leaders should know about?
So yes, the One Man Coach is an umbrella under which I do everything really. I design my courses and write my books and write my articles. Basically, I'll tell you quickly how it started and why I came up with this name. I noticed from the very beginning when I started doing training programs that people have a lot of motivation and desire to do better, to be better. They invest time, they invest money, they invest energy to go to these courses or to attend them online and learn new things. But unfortunately, most people go back to their day to day life and basically not much changes, maybe
Right,
nothing. And so I thought to myself, what can be done to change that? Because really it's a shame people invest. Like, what can be done to change that? So I started sending all my participants of trainings and workshops just very short reminders. And I decided for myself that it should not take them more than 1 minute, so maximum 1 minute,
right,
and it should give them specific action steps on this 1 minute reminder. So I said to them, hey guys, remember we discussed this, and this is what you can do with that. I started sending reminders, then it turned into a newsletter. I was doing it regularly. Then other subscribers joined. And after a couple of years, somebody said to me, can you just put all these little reminders into a book? That's how my first book came about, which is
I
called The
love that.
1 Minute Coach. Change your life 1 minute at a time, which was, I actually majored in mathematics. I like exact science. You would find that the way I write is also very mathematical in the sense that it's very logical, step by step. It's like I don't go about using too many words. I just go, okay, specifically to get straight to the point. And let's just show you an example. The 1 Minute Coach system uses whole brain learning. The left side of the brain is responsible, it's like mathematical, logical side. So it responds to the words and logical progression and bullet points and so on, stories. So I put it on the left side. And then here for each chapter, which is no more than a minute, I have action steps. So that they read, this is what you can do with it, because information these days is no longer power. It's actually taking action on the information that's power. And the easier you make it for somebody, the better. So everybody can find a minute. This is what they can do with it. And the image is what corresponds to the right side of the brain, because the right side, we register everything with images. So it's
Right.
quick and it's easy and it's quite effective. And I have another book, which is The 1 Minute Coach to Mastering Your Emotions, which is written in exact same format.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically the system is designed for people who are busy, who understand the importance of learning, but don't necessarily have the time. But then I thought, okay, everybody can find a minute, right? No excuse there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that VIP registrants for our event will receive a digital copy of that. So for those of you, you won't have to wait to get started for what you're doing. When you register and you upgrade to VIP, that's something you start right away as part of this journey. So last but not least, let me ask you, what is something that you think the leaders of today need to be thinking about or need to know this year? Obviously, it's been a big roller coaster. We're coming out of a pandemic. Everything is changing in that environment. And you mentioned that. What's something that you feel like every leader needs to be focused on and be thinking about as we go through the rest of the year?
That the only constant, as it's always been, and now more than ever, is change. It's not, okay, we've done with the pandemic, we're done with, I don't know, other things, and now things are going to go back to normal. There's no such
Right.
thing anymore. Things are
Right.
constantly going to be changing. And so learning how to manage change, how to handle change and go with it and understand that's just how things are going to be. So you want to be constantly learning, you want to be constantly improving. Don't be scared to ask for help outside or assistance, or again, work with coaches, consultants, and so on, because they stay on top of their particular niche area. So yeah, number one, change is something that's going to stay with us, so you want to learn how to manage that change. So another thing that is also very important these days, much more important than it's ever been, is the topic of inclusion. And
Right.
that's something we cannot avoid. Becoming knowledgeable and aware, what is inclusion, understanding different culture, understanding that there are different kinds of people, different types of people, and being comfortable with having a variety of people on your team and attending to their needs is also important. Also, if there is an age gap, if you're, let's say, a different generation to the most of the people on your team, you want to understand that it's the gap between, let's say, the gap between me and my parents is a lot smaller than the gap between me and my children
Yes.
that are not teenagers. So the gap now with the next generation is much bigger because of the internet, the computer, the technology. It's just the world is so different to when, let's say, I was growing up. So trying to lead somebody, again, I'm going back to where we started, trying to lead somebody from how we were taught or how we understand things work, it most often does not work. You want to understand how this generation thinks, how they make decisions, what are their fears, what were their ambitions. The more you understand some people that you're leading, the easier it will be for you to inspire them, to motivate them, and to get them to do what you need them to do.
Okay, so one of the big topics, and probably the hottest topic in leadership right now, and that I've seen over the past few years, is a concept called emotional intelligence. So, what is emotional intelligence for people who may not understand it as well? And why do you think it's such an emerging and important topic in the field?
It's definitely the topic I'm most passionate about. In fact, I wrote a book about it, the 1 Minute Coach to Mastering Your Emotions. And after we cover with leadership training the basics such as your purpose, your goals, your values, your vision, and so on, I do the second part, which I find as I create as a requirement, is the topic of emotional intelligence. Because a leader, that if we take two leaders and they're equally smart and they're equally knowledgeable and they're equally, I don't know, focused and they can manage their time and so on,
Sure.
but one has a very high emotional intelligence, which means this person knows how to respond to unexpected setbacks or threats or change in something collapses, so they know how to respond to it in the healthy and effective way. They know how to communicate with high emotional intelligence, which means they're not going to lose their temper and yell and just become aggressive and lose very good members of their team because they don't know how to express themselves in a healthy way. And then the other leader would not have that level of intelligence and would do all the things that I just mentioned in the opposite. Then you can imagine which company would be more successful, which people who will stay in that team, will continue working hard for the person and want to learn from them. We do admire people that know how to stay cool, what they sometimes say cool and collected, and at the same time not get heart attacks or cancer, God forbid, or get sick. Because if we don't know how to not just control, I'm not even talking about controlling emotions, because a lot of people learn how to just kind of swallow, push it to the side and pretend they're fine, and inside everything is just there is fire. That's not healthy, because at the end, this emotion has to come out. So to teach people how to not just push emotions to the side, but also learn how to maybe not react in that way to certain triggers, and then if you get triggered, how to release emotion in a healthy way. All these things, they help to attract team members that are much more capable and can help the company grow in a successful way, retain those people, because retention of talent is a big topic as well in the field of leadership. And not just for the company to succeed because you're emotionally strong, but also for you to really, like I was saying before, enjoy the process and not get sick at the end. Finally, when you achieve all your goals, you don't want to spend the money on treating your health, but you want to
Right.
spend your money on enjoying life.
Right. And how do people measure emotional intelligence? Or is there a system that people use? Or there are different ways that people do it? How is emotional intelligence quantified in certain ways? And I know you like mathematics, so this hopefully is in your wheelhouse.
Yes, there are actually tests for that. Just like there is IQ, there is EQ, intelligent quotient Q test, and there is emotional quotient, which can be tested actually. But emotional quotient is more common sense. It's like you're a slave to your emotions and you're really scared of certain emotions and you don't know how to respond and you can see the reputation maybe that you have. It's you can take a test. There are tests out there, quite a
Sure.
few, but I think we all know whether we're masters of our emotions or not.
Makes sense.